Space diving is a trademark term, and it's important to differentiate it that way, because the actual notion of diving from space, so if people think of, you're actually coming down from 100 kilometers or 62 miles or whatever, that's not quite what we're talking about. Certainly have an interest in figuring out how to do that, but the technical challenges associated with doing that are very, very significant. In the meantime, when we say space diving, the way I like to sort of group it is high altitude skydive from, shall we say, 100,000 to 150,000 feet, which is a wide range. There are sort of two sides of this. My particular specialty is the suit side of it and all the issues that you have to look at on the suit side. But one of the other big issues, one of the things that's really worth understanding, is that I think the main reason there hasn't been more work in this area doesn't have as much to do with suits, although there's a lot of suit work to do. It has more to do with means of access to those altitudes. That is, how the heck are you going to get to 100 to 150,000 feet? There's no airplanes that fly up there. Basically, all that's available on the market today is balloons. To go to those altitudes, you're at the very outer edge, and 150,000 feet is beyond the outer edge of what a balloon can actually achieve. You're at the edge of manufacturing limits for the materials. You're at the edge of what can be done. And so you're looking at things that are very expensive, one-time use only, and even if you cross both of those, you're still not really guaranteed that you're even going to make it to altitude. Reliability isn't very good either. So if you're looking at doing this kind of activity with a balloon, you end up being necessarily limited. On the other hand, we're here at the NewSpace conference. There's a whole lot of companies out in the other room that are working on vehicles that could get you to those altitudes, could get you there reliably, could get you there at much lower cost. And the notion of, exiting the vehicle initially, to demonstrate that it can be done, and then to develop the technology and, potentially even an emergency, to develop that capability is very, very interesting. I would argue that what's held this back more has been vehicles than particularly suits. I have a lot of interest in specific technologies that need to be taken a lot farther to make a suit much more robust and able to do this kind of activity regularly. But it's the vehicles that have been the long pole in the tent. Not to say that the suit development is cheap or easy, or that there isn't more work that should be done. In suits, in looking at this kind of activity, I am very much of the opinion that you have to build something that is robust, that is capable, and that's capable of doing this multiple times and in non-ideal situations. That is, if you're trying to thread the needle of, well, as long as the guy gets a clean exit from the vehicle and there's no spin imparted when he leaves, and as long as he keeps his orientation, and as long as he's a really good skydiver, and as long as he remains conscious, then everything's going to go great. A lot of the projects that have looked at this, that's sort of the approach they're taking, because they're wanting to pull this off once. There's the notion of, I want to break the world record, I want to jump from a higher altitude than Joe Kittinger jumped, which is the famous 102,800 feet from 1960. You may get me on the date, but there's a lot of interest in breaking that record. I really could care about that record. I'm interested in developing the technology to make sure that you can do that if you get thrown off of a vehicle, if the vehicle's damaged, if you are in the equivalent of an ejection situation, or otherwise exiting the vehicle in an unplanned way, in an unplanned attitude, even if the person's not conscious. I'm interested in a suit that can get them down, including all the components, everything from attitude control in the upper atmosphere to, making sure that you're managing all the other things that you face all the way down to a parachute that gets them to the ground. Yeah, I want you to have capability to maybe control those things if you're up to doing that, but I also want those things to be able to take care of you if you're not up to doing that. And sort of that's the approach that Orbital Outfitters takes to this. There've been a lot of, if you've sort of followed the press of this, there've been a lot of people who are after this, but they're after it as a stunt, they're after it as a one-time deal. And we're not really interested in folks who just want to do this once, or who want to do it just for the name for themselves.